each one of us, two things are going to transform our lives more than anything else. One of them is technology, and the other is urbanization. What do I mean by urbanization? More and more people are moving to cities. 200 million in China, 100 million in India. Even in Tokyo, people are moving from the towns and villages into cities. And over time, we'll see that almost 90% of us live in the big cities of the world. And the most interesting thing is that all these cities have something in common. If you look at Los Angeles, Sao Paulo, Karachi, Shanghai, you may be wondering what connects them all. They happen to be megacities. And a megacity is one that has more than 20 million people. Now note in this diagram, it's not only that they have millions of people, but that they are increasing at a rapid rate. Sao Paulo is going to increase by 15%. That's 23 million people in just a few years. New Delhi is going to add 33 million people. And even Calcutta, 14 million people. Did you know that every single second, 5 people join the middle class? And often this happens when they move to cities because they want better transport, better education, better healthcare. So I have a question for you. How will these millions of people live in the future? I'll tell you the way I used to think about it, or people like me used to think about it. I'm an artificial intelligence specialist. I have an AI company. We're techies. We're geeks and techies. And when we think of cities, we think of smart cities. And when we think of smart cities, we think of adding all kinds of technology to it. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, Internet of Things, quantum computing. You have a buzzword, give it to me. I'll add it to a smart city. Smart water, smart sewage, smart energy. But you know, that's not the right way to think about smart cities. So I'm going to take you away from Munich, and I'm going to take you all the way back to where I came from this morning, a small nation-state called Singapore. Because in Singapore, in 2014, our prime minister decided that we were going to change from a smart city to a smart nation. A more holistic way of looking at how technology is applied to cities. The way he said it was, it's an outstanding place for people to live, to work, and play in. And here's my favorite part, where the human spirit flourishes. So what does that mean, really? Let's take a pathway to the smart nation and think of that as a journey to the smart city. Let's start with a problem. Maybe you guys have a similar problem that we do in Asia. Singapore is one of the fastest aging countries in the world. And we have a responsibility to look after our elderly. So when people used to think about it, they used to think, let's just add some smartness to the problem. Here's what we'll do. We'll take all of them, we'll put them in these smart homes, we'll outfit them with cameras, put sensors everywhere, and then they'll be okay. And you know, there are these pills you can swallow now that are laced with sensors so that if you don't take your pill, the sensor will send an email to your doctor or to your daughter or ex-wife or whoever stands to benefit from it. Well, this is not the right way to think about smart cities. Let's step back. What are the issues the elderly face? By the way, it is true that a lot of them get injured in the home, but they face other things too. You know, a lot of them die because they're lonely. What's the point of having a perfectly outfitted, smart home, but there's no one to talk to? And in Singapore, the demographic that gets injured the most in accidents are old people. So if you think of it that way, then yes, a smart home makes sense. The Housing Development Board, where, by the way, 80% of Singapore's population lives, is now creating smart homes. It has the sensors and the video cameras so that if someone falls or injures themselves, an ambulance is called. But that's not enough. Other things are happening as well. Intergenerational playgrounds, mixed-use developments, so that when an old person walks out of their smart home, there are children there, there are students there, there are innovation districts, there are shopping centers. Why do we take the very people who raised us and put them far outside somewhere in high-tech places? So in Singapore, they're taking a more holistic approach. And if indeed it's true that they get injured because of accidents, then they're building more car-light suburbs. This is an example of another suburb that's coming up in Singapore. More and more of Singapore is connected by public transport, and autonomous vehicles, autonomous buses are being experimented so that we can have a lot of greenery, a lot of residential areas, and be car light, but people still need to get around. So some of the flying taxis that we heard of, or I think you called it fluke taxi. So the fluke taxi is going to be showcased in Singapore on October 22nd. Some of you can hop on a plane back with me tomorrow and join me in that. These are long-term plans to have electrical vehicles, and if you need a green space, then you can have it in the sky. But it's not all. You can have human-centric environments that are still very high-tech. While you walk around the smart city, it's green, it's full of people, it's full of laughter and light, but underneath, it still needs to be built in a smart and sustainable manner. Here are some things. Prefabrication, or as you call it, 3D printing, is now mandatory in Singapore for Housing Development Board buildings. This is a bathroom which has to be made off-site. It's part of the law now. This not only increases productivity by 35 to 40%, it's more accurate, it's more sustainable, and creates less pollution. Drones are also being used. They collect data and enable safety and precision. Now, yes, looks like something we'll see in the movies. How do something like this become a reality? When there's regulation. So Singapore passed a law and said that we will zone out certain areas where you can use drones for construction. And indeed, then using computer vision and artificial intelligence, you can tell if the project is not going according to plan, or in this case, if someone may be in danger. All of this leads to more safe, more sustainable, more efficient construction. Now, another thing that you may have heard is the idea of the digital twin. The digital twin is essentially a full simulation of a factory, of a building. And in Singapore, we created the first digital city, a $73 million data-rich live replica of the entire city. It gets data from all the public agencies. It gets data from the IoT sensors and the infrastructure so that you can experiment and test bed ideas in the digital twin before you actually put a single stone on the ground. And this is important because with climate change, as you build more, so does the temperature go up, which is why greenery is so fundamental to Singapore, and we like to call it the Garden City, which is kind of crazy. It's the most densely populated piece of land in the world, and yet a large proportion of it is all green. Now, what about the people? The physical infrastructure looks good, but the people now also need to be guided. If they are still going to waste all their time going through the government bureaucracy, going after agency, trying to get their license renewed, register their birth certificates, then that doesn't sound very smart. So Singapore decided to create an AI assistant for all its citizens. Imagine having an artificial intelligence assistant in your mobile phone that helps you through all the moments of life, from getting married to buying a home to starting a family. It won't find your spouse for you, but once you are married, it will help you think about if you're eligible for certain subsidies, your tax benefits. If you have a child, it will help you think about preschools, immunizations. All of it is using a safe, secure data cloud or on-premise system. And the purpose is to free up people's time so that they can be fully productive in the smart city. Now, Singapore is able to do this, and this is just from McKinsey, because it doesn't act as an old, boring government. It's very responsible, but it's acting like a product designer. That means it's agile. It comes up with an idea, it tests it, and then it implements it. That up, they've been testing it for 2 years. Every 3 months, they create something, they ask the citizens, they get feedback, they improve it. That's exactly the way product design and software companies work. And by doing this, they're able to launch iteratively so-called smarter programs in the city. Now, if I just walked off the stage right now, that would be very bad. Because for all my love of technology, I think we all know technology is a double-edged sword. For every good you can do with it, somebody will figure out how to do something bad. And so if you're going to make any city smart, you're going to have to do it responsibly. And in Singapore, that meant having a governance council for artificial intelligence, an advisory council on AI ethics, now a steering committee that provides frameworks and guidelines on how to avoid bias, on how to protect citizen data, on how to make sure you are secure from cyber hacks, and how to critically evaluate whether a thing works or doesn't work, and what may be its unintended consequences. I very much doubt the founders of Facebook and Twitter intended to have all of us be subjected to fake news. That was an unintended consequence. And without proper governance, you cannot have any smart city. So I would say that Singapore provides a holistic way of looking at how to become this futuristic city that we see in the movies. But it does it not only based on technology, but an interdisciplinary approach that is anchored in human centricity and responsible governance. And I really think there's a lot to learn from Europe and for Europe to learn from Asia. And I look forward to discussing it more with you. Thank you for having me here.